annoying.
Venom can't hear the...
Microphone, yeah. Sit on there.
Can you hear it? Sounds like a Geiger counter.
Stop now.
Nathan's got a shirt on, he looks very smart, I've just noticed.
I know, I've come home late today.
They could have got changed from school, you know.
I've done to come home, cook dinner, come in here. Just like, boop, boop, boop.
We'll do that for one show. We'll wear suits.
Tweed. What, a tweed top?
No, Sam.
Matt would have one if they did.
Off from yesterday. There we go. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the show. Here we are with you on September the 16th, 09. So you know what that means? That means they heard everything you said but couldn't hear what I said. Smart. Wasn't me. Anyway, forward thinking by me there. Right, good evening. Hope you're all doing very well. You've all had a good week thus far. Here we are with you on a Thursday. Friday is just round the corner with lots of rain, apparently.
It's not. It's going to be right sunny tomorrow because we've got day off and we're off out.
Are you going anywhere exciting?
Yes, we're actually going up to Ripley Castle where we got married for the day.
Very nice.
So,
Can I
yes.
ask you just one question? Why?
Why what? Why have a day off? Because I don't get many, so I'm going to make the most of it.
Why are you going somewhere on your wedding anniversary?
Wait for a shovel to be implanted into the top of his head when Shell hears this.
I was going to say we get a slap in a minute. Because Andrew, it's our 10th wedding anniversary, so it's quite
a miracle.
This is uncharted territory for me with a relationship in any shape or form. Yeah. So it's worth
It's never been beyond 7 months before.
You're not far wrong.
I've yet to do that one. Go 10 years, so it's all right. Anyway, we're all doing very well. Enough said about that, the better. Anyway, I hope you're all doing very well at home as well. As you know, I've been putting up even the new airbrush series has been going up all week. I will make live the big area on the main site tomorrow. It just needs a little bit of playing with. All the rest of it I've got to do various bits, links and stuff like that, but obviously the first part of that has gone up onto the forum now, and obviously it's been chipping up every day right the way through. Thank you for all the feedback onto it. Same thing, keep the ideas coming, because some of you come up with some real good ideas for little videos that will go into it and things like that to make our way through. But if you haven't seen it, have a look. It's basically the new airbrush series, which talks about airbrushes, and then in the first 4 parts that went up this week, it's really just discussing things like air pressure, paint mixes, obviously distance, and then in the third video, that little bit of the series, it talks about obviously putting them all together, and then I've tagged into it the standalone version of the textures video, because obviously that ties in with all of those. And again, it's got the troubleshooting things in there, which are apparently have worked quite well, because a couple of you have said that explains a lot, especially with the nozzle thing, and I have, if you go over to the main site when that is live, there's the big massive high-res pictures of all the parts as well. So I know on the forum they're a little bit smaller one, I can't make them bigger for some reason, but yes, good job. Anyway, all very much. So big talk today is about colours. So this is sort of following on from our little series that we've been doing over the last few weeks, discussing the most talked about topics that we talk about, and trying to put it to bed once and for all, so we never have to talk about it again.
Till next week.
Till somebody chirps up and says, what about RLM 02 in September 41?
Well, John's got a full-on
he has presentation for us
about this, so we're going to go off for an hour and leave it to John to explain the ins and outs of RLM 02.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go quite that far.
I would. You were showing us earlier your nice little swatches you've made.
Yes.
I just wanted to, have a look at some of the paints I've got and see what the differences were between them. That was all.
Right, hold on. I can't remember who's on a watch camera tonight. Hold on, 4, 3. Right, John's over there. Right, go on, John. Put your overhead on. Show us what we're talking about here. So as John just does this, the whole point of this conversation tonight is to talk about, obviously, the accuracy of colours. Now, as you know, I'm not a rivet counter, and to be honest, I don't really care. But there is that thing where, obviously, when you're looking at different paint manufacturers have different shades of things, which I think John's about to show us in this one quite nicely, but also about how it's, you know, perceived by the person, perceived by the camera that took it, and obviously perceived by the monitor you're looking it on. But to start with, John has got a very nice presentation in front of us. Take it away, John.
It was just something I decided to do this afternoon, not so much about the, you know, the accuracy of the colours, but the differences between different manufacturers.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of picked out, well, mainly RLM colours, to be honest, because they seem to be the most controversial. Now, it is just sprayed on white plastic on, which isn't the best base to put it on, because I did just knock this up in an hour this afternoon. But it was just to show the variations in the same colours. So at the top here we got RLM02, and Nathan can chip in. He's actually expert on RLM, but the colours I've got, this first one here is MRP's version of it. Then we've got Hataka's. And then I've got there's two AK real colour versions. There's a 1936 one and a 1941 one.
Can I just put in there a minute? There is actually another version from AK, I remember, but it's actually in the armour section, and it comes under a different colour, but it's very, very RLM02, as in the other two colour, the first two.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And that one's just XF22, Tamiya RLM grey.
Which I bet we've all used for decades.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the MRP and the Hataka look very similar, to be honest. There's not a great difference. It's a little bit darker, the MRP one.
Mm-hmm.
But then you've got the 2 AK one.
Yeah. Oh, God.
That's an early one, which is a sort of beigey colour. And then you've got the later one, which has got a definite green tinge to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, not being an expert on RLM colours, that's confused me even more now.
I'd say they're all correct.
XF22 is early RLM02. And the other two on the left-hand side are late RLM02.
Right, so that's early RLM02 according to AK, which is nothing like
That one.
the Tamiya one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're from a different factory, aren't they?
Yeah. One's from Tamiya and one's from AK. You see, this is the rabbit hole.
I can
You're
see
staring
where
right down it now, aren't you?
this is going to be a long hour and a half.
Yeah, I was going to say, right, let's move off of RLM2 and look at the RLM 76.
76, right, so you've got MRP,
Yeah,
which is that pale blue,
yeah,
Yeah.
which is what I thought it was.
yeah.
Then you've got AKs, which, to be honest, is a very pale grey. I can hardly see any bluey tinge in it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the later war one, which looks almost like a pale yellow, to be honest.
Mm.
Yeah, it's like duck egg. Yeah.
That's not even what I know as duck egg blue.
No. What AK have done with that one is jumped on some more recent research, because there were reports of Luftwaffe stuff right at the end of the war appearing in this like duck egg colour. And what AK are doing is giving you that late war.
Well, surely duck egg's more of a blue colour, though.
Yeah, but it was like RF sky colour.
Yeah, it is more of a sky colour.
not Duck Egg Blue Sky, RAF Sky. So there was a theory that there was these. I mean, everything went pear-shaped for Germany in 1945, not least what colours to paint aircraft. So AK have jumped on this. It could be this. There was this, and it's causing quite a few headaches for people, I think. But I mean,
I don't think this is all in the just the eye of the beholder of the modeler of what they're using.
I think the thing that goes on with Luftwaffe is somebody finds a reference or a piece of paper, and they find one reference to it, one piece of paper, maybe one relic floating around somewhere, and suddenly we've got a new variation of RLM 76. But what's dead frustrating is the people that do the research don't share their research. They just tell you things, and it's just like, really? Are you sure? And they're not sharing their research. It's dead hard to sort of.
See,
I'm
probably with the majority of people on here. I don't give a monkeys about colour accuracy as long as it's roughly the right colour. But when you've got things like that, it's got really confusing.
Yeah. Can I just in chat? Russell says that it usually goes off profiles or photos of the subjects if possible. The problem with profiles is that's the person that's done that profile is their interpretation of what the colours are. So you can't really go off profiles because who knows if the profile's right.
Yeah.
But then photos, again, especially World War II stuff, 99.9% of the photos were in black and white. And a lot of the colour ones that you get nowadays are colourised ones.
Yeah.
So again, it all depends on whoever's colourised it, how do they know what colour they've coloured it to. And also, the colour film at the time wasn't very accurate either. So even colour film isn't particularly fantastic. It's a fantastic resource.
Do you know what though? Because obviously from my background of what I used to do, I dealt a lot with colour chips and paint mixers. And there's no such thing. There's no way any of them colours there are accurate to anything. It'll be absolutely potluck because I've had colour chips from manufacturers, so like PPG paint, DuPont, Sikkens, Glazerite. These are all paint manufacturers for cars, yeah. And all their paint colour chips that you get, your little swatch, you go, oh, that's like in the. None of them match because you've got even your colour code on your car will tell you what colour it is, but there'll be, from different manufacturers will be, God knows how many shades of that colour. It's impossible that there's an accurate, 100% accurate colour of anything that's on any vehicle from any conflict. I think. So it just don't work like that. Paint don't work like that.
And that's not even taking into account weathering and bleach.
No, I'm on about factory fresh here. I'm not even on about weathering or conditions or anything like that. I'm just on about a factory fresh car. Because you can go to any car lot and you'll have a lineup of silver cars and they're all a different shade of silver, even though they're supposed to be the same colour. Because it's obviously the batch of what's being painted on that day in the factory. There's variables, so many variables to stuff. So, I don't know. This whole colour accuracy thing is.
Sorry.
It's a minefield that you're going to go down and just give yourself an headache and go round and round in circles and just get nowhere. So.
The closest one is the RLM 66. So again, we've got MRP, Hataka, Real Colour, and Tamiya XF63.
Yeah.
And they all look not too well. Those three look not too dissimilar. Again, the AK one, you can't see it so well off my camera, but when I'm looking at it, it's got very slight greeny tinge to it.
Again, the funny thing is though, John, right? When you've painted whatever you're painting in that from your model kit, yeah, half of them are cockpit colours or wheel well colours, yeah.
Yeah, you can't see.
All right, we'll take the blues for underneath as well, but they're underneath colours pretty much as well. So half of it you're never going to see. So it's
this one's RLM 81.
Yeah.
We've got the MRP, which is a sort of brownie colour, and then AK do 3 versions of it.
Yeah.
And I was just interested to see, you've got this brownie one. This one again has got a very definite green tinge to it. And again, this is a brown one, not dissimilar to that one, but it's a little bit of a warmer brown.
Yeah. But, I mean,
And then just because I had a couple of different sorts of RAF dark green, so you got the Attacker here, and then you've got XF81 Tamiya's, which is a bit, when you look at it compared to the Attacker one, is got a bit of a drabby look to it.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of brown in that.
Yeah.
But it was just, like I say, I was just interested to see how different makes, manufacturers were.
Absolutely. And if I may butt in, I think what's really nice is, and John gets a golden star for this, it just shows you the reason why people have concerns about colour. Because obviously from a different manufacturer's point of view, they're all different colours. And even with the AK, and we know what AK have done, because they've been saying for years about, obviously they're doing colour accuracy, they've got research on it now, and that's why they're doing different versions of the same colour as well, because it's like late, medium and early types and various things like that. So they're trying to cover all the bases with it, but it doesn't make it easy for the modeller, especially for the newer modeller who's coming along, and he gets criticised because it's not quite the right shade of green. And let's face it, we spoke about olive drab on previous shows because that one comes up a lot as well. Olive drab is an absolute nightmare because that colour, as we all know, changed throughout the entire of World War II. And it literally was one of those, well, which one are you doing? Which country's olive drab? Because the UK one was different to the US one, and obviously the Canadian one as well. They've all got their different shades and hues and all the rest of it to it. So, the point where it's right or wrong is somewhat immaterial, because there is no definitive answer of which one's right, which is what John's shown there as well with various of the colours. But it doesn't make it easy for, you say, that modeller, and you've come along, and especially if you're, I grab one of these out here, you got your instructions, and it's got the colour caller, and you look at the manufacturer they're using against it. So as far as you're concerned, you're using the right one, and then obviously you get criticised by somebody of saying, that's wrong. And that's, I think, where the difficulty comes in, and the reason we get so many questions get asked about it, And
but my argument is that person that's coming and saying that's wrong, but is there evidence that it's wrong?
Absolutely.
You can't just go to somebody and go, that's wrong shade. You can't say that because they've got no idea of what the right shade is, if that makes, which is obviously John doing his little swatch test there has just proved, because there's different shades of different manufacturers. Interpretation of that colour, and that's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah. And again, like we said before, you've got this situation as well, is that we're dealing with what technically is a scale model that doesn't even go into account about the scale effect. So as we know, the smaller you get, the more you need to lighten it just perhaps a little bit to obviously to make it that type of more nicer on the eye as well. So, and that's why I think, like we said before, when you go on to the weathering side of it, a lot of people bleach out panels and do that because they look really nice, right or wrong, as we said before. But it's a nicer experience, I think, to look at it if you've got those good contrasts and all the rest of it, just to break it up and everything else,
Well, that's what we were discussing the other week. It's the art side of it, isn't it? It's your interpretation of said piece, colours. Whatever way you want to look at it, it's whoever individual take on it, because and people see colours different as well, personally, don't they?
Yes. Yeah.
So what probably looks nice, what I think looks nice, might not appeal to Nathan or John or Andy or Phil. They might go, that not appealing to their brain, shall we say?
Yeah.
And again, that's the art side of it again that we was discussing before, wasn't it? It's that.
I must admit, to my mind, your ME262 was the wrong shades of colour that you did.
Which one? Whose one?
Matt's. Not 262. The
Comet. Oh, I totally agree. The brand's just, it was.
I only said it because I know you don't like the colour.
Well, I don't like it, but again, there was, it is what it is. But yeah, I agree. For my personal, I weren't happy with that, to be honest, the colours. But it was done for a show in double quick time, wasn't it? Because I did it as a bit of a bet that I'd get it done for whatever show it was in the time. But yeah, I didn't. But again, I would argue as well, even
going back to sort of World War II era, the actual real colours that they used, I bet they varied. I bet no two tins were alike, because I mean, even nowadays with modern production methods, you know, you get things like wallpaper. I mean, we've all done it. You buy 5 rolls to wallpaper your front room.
Yeah,
and
you need
get
your
that
batch
one
numbers.
roll that you've not checked the batch number.
Yeah.
And you put it up, and it's, oh crap,
Yeah.
it's a different colour. You know, they can't get that right nowadays. So back with production methods, plus there was a war going on. You can guarantee the colours varied like anything anyway.
Hey, I think people kind of forget that bit of it. You know, there's a global conflict going on. The aim was to churn out as many of said vehicles, weapons, to go to the front line as a disposable object, isn't it?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
technically, you're chucking some paint on it. Yes, there was obviously like the Germans and obviously the US and the British. They're their standard. This is what it should be. But probably when it came to whatever factory they were made in, it was their batch of it, if whatever they had, or a shade of, or whatever. So, you know, I don't know, probably even black and white photos, if you've got a lineup of new stuff, you could probably tell a different tint to each one. I bet that, you know, it's not impossible, really. It's one of them really weird scenarios, I think, where there's just no right or wrong answer to it. It's just not worth stressing about to me. So.
Absolutely, and I must admit, I don't stress about it at all, all the rest of it, because, as I say, I think the reason, I don't understand why people get so hung up about colours and all the rest of it, unless it really is completely the wrong colour, because there's just so many variables that you're dealing with it. Purely because if you're going to be putting down a colour onto a model, first of all is you're dealing with something that's this big at 72nd scale. So obviously it's going to look different in colour than you've actually got the real thing. I've got aluminium sheet down there. If I put it next to this, it's not going to look the same. You know, the hues, just the way it works and how you look at it. Then you've got obviously all the variables that start to come into play from a modelling point of view. So as soon as you put on a coat over the top, so say a gloss, a satin or a flat finish, that'll change the colour as well, because obviously you put a flat on there, it's going to lighten it. You put a gloss on, it's going to darken it a little bit, you know, and various things, let alone when you come into obviously just the weathering point of view. If you are going to try and perhaps lighten a few panels and stuff, you've shifted it completely where it needed to be anyway, and then obviously washes going on board, and then you're going down the rabbit hole of filters. You know, if you're filtering your model and all the rest of it, then you might as well be putting anything, you know, a grey in, could be any type of grey by the time you filtered it, with washes and oils and all the rest of it like that. And then, you know, the big thing again, your lighting conditions when you finish your model. You know, like down in here, all right, I have a set lighting scale and all the rest of it, and I get out my little card and we put it here every Monday morning. The cameras all get linked to it, you know, so roughly, hopefully the colours are pretty good. But most people don't sort of do that, and you know, it's what is in the eye of the beholder when you're taking the photo of the object. You know, how's your camera doing? You know, is it doing it in exact, or is it going to be doing a version of with different cameras, take it in different ways? And I know that because if I use this one, they come out a lot darker colour wise. It seems to have a richer colour one on that, and to be honest, nowadays I tend to keep with one brand of camera. But if I have a Panasonic camera and then we have a Canon camera and all the rest of it, in editing we used to have to play with the colour balances and everything, because they used to be slightly different. The matte looks blue default on the cameras above, but it's not, it's green, so it's finding those types of balance as well. Then obviously once you've done all of that, if you're looking at it on a screen, how good is your monitor? And that's another exact thing, because here I've got 2 monitors, 2 different brands. If I do that thing, because obviously it's just one monitor linked together, and stretch the photo across both, it's different colours completely. You know, so you've got all these different variables about it. So that's why I'm never that, you know, worried, as long as it's roughly in the ballpark. But going back to what John showed there, some of those colours are completely different. It's not like they're in the ballpark, you know. So some of those we had in there were very brown versus cream colour versus grey. So it's not as straightforward, because as I say, if you've got that, you know, if somebody had done one of those ones where it was literally a grey colour, you know, and actually it should have been the cream, or vice versa, then you're going to get people say that's the wrong colour. But from your point, you've followed your instructions, you've got your conversion chart, you know, And if you are a little bit sensitive, shall we say, to criticism, it can sting, can't it? You know, you get someone come along and say, oh, you haven't done this and it's the wrong colour and all the rest of it. You're like, right, I'm off to Lego. You know, and do it that way.
Or sci-fi.
Sci-fi is always the best one because no one's right for that.
The thing is, me and you were talking for work earlier, and we were saying it's like paint brands. You know, there's a lot of modelling paint brands out there that do said colours, And like you said, which was a fair point at the time when you said it, it's like, well, I use the one that's easiest to use for me. You know, say life colour could be the most accurate shade of said colour I need, but I don't like using life colour, or you know, I don't like using MRP or whoever's paint it is. And that's the thing you have to think of as well, is what paints do you prefer, what do you get on with, what do you find the easiest to use, and stick with them, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Don't think, oh, that one's more accurate, it's going to be a better experience, shall we say, because if you don't get on with the actual paint itself, then you're in a world of pain, aren't you?
I was going to say, and that, to be honest, what me and Matt were talking about, and it is, I think, quite a valid point, is that if you were painting your model, and let's assume this is in green, but as you said, life colour is a spot-on match for it, but on your shelf you've got, I don't know, say Tamiya, which you enjoy spraying, and you've got it there and all the rest of it. Would you go out and try and force life colour? And if you've never used it before, as we know, it's not the most straightforward paint to use, you know, or something else, or even like, say, a brand of enamel paints was known for its colour accuracy, for instance. Does that mean you would then give it all up and suddenly start spraying enamels, you know, and have to wait weeks for it to dry and all the downsides that go with it? But it's a perfect colour. You know, I would say always I would go what works for me and what I've got. You know, what brands do I enjoy using, what I get on with, you know, rather than try and force it. Because, and I have heard this argument, a lot of people have said about life colour, you know, is probably got one of the most accurate colour lineups there is. But I don't get on spraying it. I never have done. I've tried it many, many times, but it's not a paint that I enjoy using, so I wouldn't do it. I'd rather use something else, you know. And as I say, from my point of view, as long as it's in the ballpark, if it's grey and green, that's good enough for me. But we've all sprayed certain colours over the years, and I know some manufacturers clearly have got it wrong, you know, and, you know, name dropping a few. Hitaka did a French green that apparently they said was right, but then it turns out the tank that they got the colour reference from was painted the wrong colour. So they had to redo it, and it was brought up to them. It was proven that, this tank was painted the wrong colour because it was a museum one. So they found the right colour, and then they redid it and everything else. And that was when we first took Hitaka on, because it came up and we did speak to them about it, you know. But other manufacturers, as we've spoken about before, was it Guns changed one of their colours?
Guns are changing a load of their formulas at the minute, an absolute load, and they've dropped a lot of paints as well.
Yeah.
A lot of paints have gone, and quite, I would say, common paints as well, quite popular paints, I would say, has gone off their Aqueous range, not off the Mr. Colour range, because you were, when we'd done an order, wasn't it, Andy? Yeah. And there's quite a few, and it's the higher number ones as well, which
does make you wonder whether or not they're going to bring them back out again as the different colours, because when you look at their C range and their H range, some of a lot of the colours don't match up at all, even though they're supposed to be the same colour. They're not the same colour. But Tamiya have done the same. I mean, like, it was a XF62 olive drab.
Ah, that's changed.
That's changed, yeah. It was a darker colour. Now it's a darker, bit browny. It's sort of like gone a bit lighter and more greeny now.
Yeah, it's gone from being actual US World War II tank olive drab to British. Yeah. They like a Firefly olive drab.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is...
Yeah, I know MRP get a bit of stick as well, don't they, for changing colours?
Well, again, I suppose, like Nathan said, if people are coming up with new information, and that filters through then, and then they're going, well, perhaps it's not right shade we've done, we need to alter it and play with that formula. I mean, I know, like, we're going back to Guns at the minute, the US interior green is not now, it's like XF4, it's like zinc chromate.
Yeah.
People are going to fall, because somebody has fallen into that trap when they've bought, you know, obviously we just send out what they pay for. But it's dramatically changed, because I had one left of the old shade, and obviously then we had a batch of the new one, and it's just the tops, everything is just a completely different. It's zinc chromate, but they're just still calling it interior green. So, yeah, again,
We had a thing recently, didn't we, where somebody bought, was it RLM 83?
ooh, that's the blue one.
Which is blue. But when you look at some things, it's green, and others, it's blue. And then we even found pictures, didn't we, where it's blue.
Yes.
And Nathan, then we talked to Nathan about it, didn't we? And it's like a real weird one where, say, people say it's green, some people say it's blue.
Mm-hmm.
And
Again,
it's different in a colour.
I don't think, though, any RLM colours at the back end of the wall can be 100% accurate. It's just impossible. They had no facilities for it. They would have been chucking anything and anything that they could make to put on any colour. Do you know what I mean? So there's no definitive, that is the right RLM 83, because it's impossible. The factories were just about flattened. You know, supply chains were bust. So how are they going to get the actual raw materials to make the right shade of said colour that was in their manual that they wouldn't, would they?
No.
It's just what they could make to put on it.
As Jeff says, duck egg. You see that range from sort of like a bluey colour to a greeny colour, don't you?
Azure blue.
It's in between. Oh, it's all blue.
It's all blue. We've been there.
Let's go down the Azure blue route. Or perhaps not, perhaps
Or
we'll leave that
purple.
one.
David made a comment in chat, which I agree with, that people that are looking at your model aren't going to have a clue about the correct colour anyway. But the thing is with that, David, is, as we all know, if you're at a model show, there's always that one dickhead.
don't you mince your words.
Yeah, he's on a roll tonight, isn't he?
that thinks they're an expert and will, you know,
and we all know who he's talking about as well. But anyway,
pull you up and drag you over the coals for it.
Yeah.
For hours.
Yeah. Each of us in turn. I felt like I've been abused.
We've been interrogated.
There's also the story of the fella who got his key and at a model show at an RF museum scratched some of the paint off one of the aircraft. The Junkers 88, so you probably work out which museum it's from that, to get a paint sample, but the aircraft was repainted.
You say it's a restored aircraft, it's not the original paint.
No.
So
It was. I've had discussions in the past with someone who's bought relics of crashed aircraft off eBay and similar sites because they've got a bit of paint on them, and he's matched to that, and then he wasn't best impressed. When my friend who used to restore aircraft pointed out it being in the ground for 60, 80 years, it might have changed the colour of the paint. And he spent a fortune collecting little bits of Luftwaffe crashed aircraft to try and get paint samples. I mean, I've got like a colour chart from a book for RAF. I've got the swatch for the RALs. And the RAL one's probably accurate because it's a contemporary standard, isn't it? And Hataka's a perfect match for the RAL standard. But the German stuff, I mean, I've got paint chips here that are based on recipes for paints. And the thing that threw a curveball with RLM 83 is somebody found a recipe for RLM 83, I think in the Czech Republic somewhere, made it, and it turned out it was blue. And that's why a lot of bother's being caused, because a lot of model kit instructions say RLM 83, and what they actually mean is probably RLM 81 or 80, another green. And a lot of people are starting to paint their aircraft blue because the kit manufacturers put RLM 80. There's a massive confusion over any of the 80s in the Luftwaffe. It's just, you just don't. The simple answer is nobody knows. No one ever will. And I think people have just got to pick an RLM 02 they like, pick an RLM 82 they like, and just run with it. And make sure all your RLM 82 aircraft match each other, rather than chasing this holy grail of a factory fresh paint sample coming out of some time machine somewhere. And I mean, that's the whole, you know, I mean, are these colour chips right?
Yeah.
You know, because I've seen people online comparing paints to colour chips, and I've got colour chips from all the made. I've got this book, I've got the other one upstairs, and the colour chips are different. and it's just like, we just have to accept. I think that go with your gut feeling. Pick an RLM02 that you like. And I use the Hataka ones because that's the paint I've got, and it looks right to me. Is it right? I don't know, and I never will. And no one's ever going to stand at the other end of the Luftwaffe SIG and say that's the wrong RLM02. So,
counters back.
you know, it's time to just put it to bed, because I think everybody's waiting for something to pop out of an archive that was, you know, I mean, it got probably firebombed in Dresden, didn't it? It just doesn't exist anymore. So you just have to move on and live with it, I think, and go with your best. Go with your gut.
I'm not laughing at you, Dave.
Matt can see what I'm doing. Hold on.
He's
It's Nathan. Everyone unmute yourself. I've muted you all in turn. Everyone unmute yourself a minute.
I am unmuted.
Oh, you know.
Try that. I was trying to find out who it was quietly, so I muted Matt and then I left it. Then John, it's Nathan's, but it looks like it's gone now.
I'm just I've had this conversation with this pillock that comes to the Luftwaffe SIG table every freaking show and talks about pre-war RLM 62 and how Vallejo's the only match. I was like, just get a life.
Nate, is your phone near the computer?
Nope, my phone is. Yeah.
It's you that's doing. It's stopped now.
Stop now, took it out your pocket.
Yeah, stop now, took it out your pocket.
Hey, the thing is as well though, if you go back to the First World War, nobody ever does colours for that, do they? There's no paint manufacturer ever gone down that route of, I think there's one. Was the one who did the enamels? Who was that?
Oh yeah, I can't remember who that was now. Yeah,
that was a very long time ago, but it probably, I think there's one manufacturer who's actually dared to go down the World War on colour route.
What's the name? Didn't they? Oh god, the little acrylic bottles.
Oh, Hataka. Not Hataka. Akan.
Akan. Yeah, they did them. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, but they're hard to get, aren't they?
Yeah.
But no offence to Akan, but I'm talking sort of the bigger manufacturers here. Say, I mean, if anybody would probably do it now, it'd be AK, wouldn't it? Or perhaps MiG Ammo, one of them lot. They've never gone near it, I don't think, from what I can recall. It's again, I mean, even when Wingnut Wings were around, even they didn't put what colour it was, did they?
No, they used to put a question mark on the instructions.
Might be.
Yeah.
Again, they're just stuff so old, isn't it? And like you say, even the fragments that have been found or whatever, obviously they were canvas planes and so it's probably going to be a bit harder to match them. But what they have found is probably faded and worn and weathered and just generally, you know, the older stuff gets, it's like just a proper oil painting, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, I watch a guy on YouTube who does restorations, and obviously the amount of rubbish he takes off to get to the original paint underneath, apart from the damage he has to repair, is just, you won't believe it. It's like two different paintings, but the smoke, obviously the varnish that we used has gone yellow, and different sort of restoration over the years, if some of them have been done, and overpaint and all stuff. It's interesting, but yeah, it's an insight of how the paint changes over time as well, and ages. You know, so.
And Mark says, does it really matter if it looks okay to you?
That's the conclusion.
That's probably where we're trying to get to, isn't it? After all this.
And again, this is the whole point of us talking about this tonight is one, to explain that different paint manufacturers look differently, but also the reasons why they are different. That's the whole point to it as well. So, you know, we said before, your style of weathering may, you know, you might be one of these people who always lightens your paint a little bit because of obviously how you like it, and obviously from a weathering point of view as well, and go through. But you think everyone's on here saying about, oh, I don't care and all the rest of it. Yeah, it comes up all the time, isn't it? People talk about it all the time. So clearly it's bothering people, you know, about it. So the whole point of doing this is, you know, to have the discussion on, why does it bother people? Why do people get so antsy about it? Why do people worry about it as a modeler when you're doing it? You know, and we've all done it though, haven't we? We've all literally done that thing about, you've painted your model, and obviously Matt's had it with the Comet, and then you look at it and you think, that ain't right. You know? So, and again, if you're up to the gun and you're doing like a model show or something else and it's like 2 days time, you haven't got time to repaint it, it's different. But many a time I've done it and you think, do you know what? I don't know, it's just something not sitting right. It just doesn't look right to me. My view of that particular colour is more brown or more green or more grey or whatever it may be. And then obviously I will then just repaint it. But I think another one to talk about as well is that point where if you paint your model, say you're doing it like when I did the Vulcan, you do the grey. Grey's grey at the end of the day. I couldn't tell you the differences of grey. Maybe dark and ghost greys because I've got the blues in there, but all the other greys are the same to me. They're just either lighter or darker grey, you know. But when you're putting it through and you're putting it down, you're like, yep, okay, looks okay. But at the time when I did it, I thought it looked very light. But when you put the contrast colour onto it, so the green goes next to it, all of a sudden it completely changes. And that happens a lot. Sometimes I'll be painting a model and you're putting down that initial colour and you're thinking it doesn't look right, but you need the contrast to come along, especially on camos and splinters and digital camos, to set the original colour to look right as well. You know, so then you've suddenly got that thing of saying, actually, that doesn't look too bad when you're going through. And I think that's sometimes, it doesn't matter even if it's colours, it can be metallics as well and metallizer finishes. Because sometimes, to be honest, the B17, when I did it, when I first put that coat down onto it, I thought it looked too shiny. It looked like a bloody mirror, you know. But actually, when we did a few panels and we did them different colours, it changed it a bit. But the big point was just putting a little bit of olive drab near metallizer paints completely changes it. All of a sudden all the colours popped from it and it looked like it was about, it should have been, or in my eyes, I look at it, it looks perfect to me. And that's that thing, because you need a good contrast to set it off. So, you know, if you're doing like a modern military, let's call it, boring aircraft, and they're just, you know, as you say, grey all over and that's it, it's quite difficult. But even putting a different coloured nose onto them, suddenly you've got the contrast to do it and it sets the theme of it. You know, the metallizer on this one, it's that thing about you've got the blue of the tail, the black of the front, all of a sudden it sort of, it neutralises it and brings it a lot more in scale. But I think you've always got that problem if you're doing one aircraft, say, and say it's just grey, or a tank and it's just grey, it's very difficult to sort of, you know, get it to sort of set and to hold. I think that's the harder ones, you know, because like we said about that Azores blue, chances are that Azores blue, when you do it and you're spraying it down, because that's your only colour on there because it's just on the bottom, but when you get the demarcation, you get the midstone and that on there, the brown, suddenly it doesn't look too bad. Because to be honest, Andy, when you did that one, it looked awful. Then you sort of did it, but by the time you put those other colours near it, it looked all right.
No, but then I'd resprayed the Azure blue by that time.
Still look rubbish. But now it looks absolutely fine, no problem at all. But I think, again, that thing, when you just put one colour onto it, you're looking at it thinking, that is never right, you know? But it's difficult unless you've got something next to it and, you know, to give you the contrast between the two. And it's set that colour as well. I think that's a lot. Because many, many times I've painted aircraft and I've been spraying on them and I'm thinking, I don't know, it just doesn't look right to me. And the thing is, when you're into that thing about putting the next camo on, it's difficult to go back. When you've just got the first colour on, you could repaint over the top of it, then do the camo work and away you go. But the bit where you've done, say you've put a grey on, then you put your green on, you've got that thing now, because obviously if you're going to change the grey colour, you've got to remask everything, you know, to go back and do it. So it's not as straightforward, but I still think it's one of those things. It's very easy to go down the rabbit hole thinking it just doesn't look right and all the rest of it before you've got a contrast colour next to it.
Yeah. Jeff said earlier on, it says that for me it's the point, it's your model and your own interpretation and representation of a subject at a given space and time. Who's qualified to say it's wrong? Problem is, you go to model shows, 101 people are qualified.
Everyone's an expert.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? The colour police are the same as the rivet counters, aren't they? You know, they like to proclaim their expertise
Especially
and tell you at length where you've gone wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But if you turn around to them and say, right, okay, show me some of your work that you've done to, you know, show me where I've gone wrong, they run a mile because they haven't got anything. They never build anything. They never paint anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're all the same, aren't they?
I've said it before. I think that one of the guys took a kit and put it in the competition area. I think it was an owl, wasn't it, Matt?
Yeah.
And we were stood there, and there was some guys commenting on how it was the wrong colour. It should be brown or it should be green, and it was the other way around. And there was one aircraft of this particular marque never built, and the photo was black and white. So how can they comment? How can they be an expert on what colour it should have been, whether it was right or wrong?
Exactly. I mean, the photograph might have had a yellow filter on it, or a green or a red filter, and a black and white picture.
But it's black and white
Like
anyway.
greens can look black, and you put a different filter on, and greens look.
Andy, it's because
Right.
it makes them feel important.
Oh,
I think
But again,
people-
it's you know, as I say, it's very easy for us to say it who've been doing it a while, and to be honest, don't care. You know, it's that thing where people are like, "Oh, is that the right?" Yeah, I don't care. It's done. I'm not changing it now. Especially at a model show, you know, where you think I'm going to take it home and respray it.
remask it all.
Yeah, that's it. But, you know, it is that thing. If you're a newer modeler to this, and this is where I think obviously we get a lot of questions from it, isn't it? And hopefully, you know, what you'll take away from this constructive but most informative chat is that, you know, actually at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. There is no right or wrong to this and the various things that go on with it. And as we said before, you know, let's face it, in this day and age of filters and, you know, with people, you know, jazzing up their photos and that, again, it's very easy to get lost the originals and various things. Even in a digital age, I think it's worse, you know.
Everything's fake.
Everything's fake, yes.
Facebook, Instagram and all that, everything's fake.
I must admit, the amount of photos I see of models on, you know, Instagram and on YouTube and that, which have all got filters on them, and I often think, why would you put a filter on your model? Because surely you can't see it after. When there's a filter on it, blurs it slightly and smooths it out and gives it a contrast colour. And I'm thinking, why would you do that? I want to see the original thing. I want to know what it looks like, not what, you know, Photoshop thinks it should look like. You know?
Yeah. I mean, I have used filters on Instagram. I will admit to that. So
Yeah, but
some
what
of mine
about
are
on your
fake.
models? I'm not on about you.
Yeah, well, you know, just need to de-age myself somehow.
Fire filter.
That's it.
You
But-
lock the white balance settings on your camera, photograph a model against a white background, and then put it in front of a black background, it will shift the look of the colours completely.
Yeah.
And that's the same camera, same lighting,
again, primer.
same model. It's just crazy people trying to say this colour's wrong, that colour's right. Even relatively modern stuff like Gulf War Tornado Pink, you know, that's in living memory, but we still can't agree that. You're like, white, but if you lock your camera in, and then I've just finished the yak and I photographed it in front of white and it didn't look nice. Put it on a black background, it looked nicer. And again, this is green and black, but I sprayed it green and grey. I thought it looked better on the model, not spraying it black. But I think people are just going to have to accept the truth is,
Unacceptable.
you just have to go with an interpretation. Pick a manufacturer whose paint you like and just run with it.
Just grab a thing a second. Hold on. I'm just going to grab a.
Somebody's going to dig out another piece of paper and it's going to add to the collective.
I mean,
feeling
look, all the
what the-
people
what
around.
the colour was.
Look,
And you just
some
have
people
to
say
look
that
at it
my
and go, maybe not, and just stick with what you think looks right.
some
If you
people
look at
tell me,
John's RLM02s, I like the Hataka one.
I was gonna say some people are telling me that that's not Russian green.
And it's black on mine. But,
Actually, it's actually dark brown.
What is it? Is that as Russian green as mine?
Yeah.
oh, this is Russian green.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let's get the dust off of this one. This will. Again, this is that thing where I don't know how well this will work. Let me just shift that. So, hold on. So there we go. That's one of my cameras on auto on front, and then this is the other one with the white balance set. All right, they're slightly not in alignment,
completely.
but you can see the difference in the colour.
Yeah.
To be fair, do you know the first one, it looks like you've only got one green and one in the sand.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is what we're talking about, obviously, with the colours and the things like that. As you say, it's very difficult, isn't it, to see the colours onto it. Yeah. We lock onto this one, how that green changes. completely comes out of it. And that's just the camera. One of them's obviously set up correctly, and the other one's I've just flicked into auto mode. So that shows you how, the differences can just appear on, a camera on a live shot, let alone from obviously when you're doing it. So somebody who would see that colour, they say, oh, okay, you've got those colours, no problem at all. And then we flick it over to here, to say it looks washed out, the colours all look different. Which one would you're sort of going for, isn't it? It's one of those ones where I think it just shows it quite nicely in there how things can change, and that's just obviously from two cameras seeing it differently. So how would it works the same with two different people looking at it. You might have somebody looking at it one way and then somebody looking at it another way, and how different are they? Mm-hmm. So again, it's that thing about like John's camera, John's colour chart. I reckon if you put it on my screen now, and we did it between both cameras, it would give you two completely contrasting views of it,
But going back to the model show scenario,
if two photographers stood next to each other, and one had used Fujifilm and another had used Kodachrome, the same aircraft would look different, and then you're introducing a variable when the photograph is developed and printed. So you can't use colour photographs. I mean, I'm just mindful of a saying my friend used to have, and he said, if you're going to try and work out colour accuracy, he simply said, no good will come of it. It's just
which is very
run
true.
a hide into nothing. And I think we just need to sort of just go with your gut feeling and see where it takes you. And I just try to make sure if I do I'm doing a series of aircraft, I'm using Hitaka for all of them, so they're either all right or they're all wrong.
Yeah.
It's up to whichever wants to say it's wrong. I don't care. It's just a thing. Just have to live with it, because you're just going to wreck your mojo. Knocking back to last week's topic, these people that John was saying who chase colour accuracy, they never build anything because they can't settle on what colour to paint it.
My advice would be, as long as you're happy with it, go with it. If anyone criticises it, just punch your lights out.
Just assault them.
Again, this is one of these things. At the end of the day, it's a hobby and you're having fun with it. And like we said through a lot of these shows over the last few weeks, it's that thing about you being happy with what you've done. If you've got that niggling little thing in the back of your mind that says, do you know what? I don't think that colour's right. It should be a little bit this way. I've seen photos or I've seen videos on it and it looks a bit like this. And, it bothers you enough. I would say don't even touch that model. Just your next one, the next time you're painting it in that scheme or that colour, whatever it is and all the rest of it, then try and match to see more what you've seen. But I certainly wouldn't be thinking, right, I'm going to have to repaint the entire thing now, because it doesn't look right to me.
How does this colour thing go with judging at model shows then? Because just going back to the model show scenario, right? It's not very often you get good lighting in a venue, is it?
Never.
At all.
Yeah.
It's normally the yellow stuff that gives you an headache after a couple of hours.
Yes.
It's not brilliant lighting for photography or displaying, let's be fair. But obviously, the competition area is normally a little bit different. But again, not being a judge and never judging a model show, I wouldn't know. But again, is this a criteria? Does any of you lot know in judging a fit? Obviously, if something's blatantly the wrong colour, then that's obvious pretty much to anybody into it. Anybody who kind of knows the subject, even a tad, would probably know that's the wrong colour. But obviously, shades of, hues of, whatever, it's all relevant, and like we've discussed, weathering and all the other stuff changes it. So people judging, how do they combat that? How do they get around that bit?
It is definitely an interesting thing, because I wouldn't know. I will agree with you. Telford isn't so bad as it used to be, but do you remember Telford like 5-6 years ago? Everything was orange. They had those bloody orangey lights, wasn't it? They've changed it a bit now. It's not as bad as it used to be, but they used to have those giant orange lights, and everything was a horrible colour under those. Even looking at people, they looked odd, And again, and in some museums as well, like, to be honest, Fleet Air Arm Museum, my local one, that's awful lighting in there. You know, it's dark, it's dingy. Again, they try their best by moving halogen lights around, but as we know, that's not really nice lights. You know, when me and Matt went to Mossam, wasn't it? They have a thing where they bought. Sorry, Eindhoven, wasn't it?
Eindhoven.
When we went to Eindhoven, they bought lamps for pretty much every foot on the displays, wasn't it? That they had obviously got a deal with IKEA, and they all had daylight bulbs in them. And every single one, there must have been, I don't know, 600 lamps in that place, all doing it to put proper lighting. And admittedly, because it was more for figures, it was smaller stuff and all the rest of it. But the bigger ones had them as well. But that was, again, you don't see that over here. I've never seen anybody put proper lighting onto them. But because you've got all of these lamps set all the way along, it gave a very neutral light effect right the way through. So everything looked like a good colour. But again, how many times you go to a model show, even in like smaller halls and stuff like that, where they tend to have normal lighting, shall we say, than the big industrial stuff, it's probably not 100%, you know, going to give you that proper colour rendition. So again, it's one of those things you take it, I would think you take it as a general, as just looking at it, it looks like the right colour, but does it have it, I would like to know, on a scorecard, does it have colour accuracy? Mark it out of 10?
I hope not.
Because then who's to say Jeff, who's got the winky eye, you know? And
that split the decision that one was deemed to be more accurate than the other, and that's what split first and second place.
Yeah, has that ever happened at the Nationals for Best in Show?
I hope not.
Well, normally, hey, if you go back to the Best in Show, normally they're one colour and shiny.
Yeah, normally they're just in metal.
You know, I think that aircraft, the scratch-built aircraft, was the last one 2 years ago, wasn't it? Which was brilliant. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But again, that was more for the actual modelling skill of building it from nothing, I think, rather than, I mean, the paint job was lovely, but again, the accuracy of that colour was probably the most irrelevant thing on that because of how it had been done. And again, it was the guy who used to the sci-fi, that Italian bloke, wasn't it, who did the sci-fi stuff, who makes... but they were all like shiny, like looking like a Bugatti or a Ferrari or something like that. You know, the colours they were using. So again, that's kind of... I'm thinking, you know, just going back to the model competition thing, they're probably more inaccurate than the ones on the table because you're going for more contrast to make it stand out more.
So
they're probably more altered and more off, probably shade of what the real colour would have been to get the interest and that magpie effect, as you always say, of "ooh, that looks nice." You'll go to that one. You know what I mean? Because if I were doing competitions, that's the way I would go, with high contrast.
Absolutely, I totally agree. You know, if I you know, put this in perspective, seriously, if somebody said to you, right, you got to enter a model into say Telford or someone else, I would do it so my model stood out from a mile away. So I would make it as bright and as contrasty as possible and as magpie-y. So when people look along, especially at Telford, because there's bloody hundreds, you know, you want yours to stand out, don't you? Because if you did something accurate, it would be quite muted in a big sea of model kits. And you really want to get yours noticed, you know, and you want that buzz around it. So I would literally bling it up.
I know, I know from sort of the armour side of stuff, Panzer Grey gets altered a lot because I think the original Panzer Grey was a very dark grey, a very boring dark grey.
Yeah.
So they put blue in it to give it a different hue and to just brighten it up, I suppose, but try and keep it grey, if that makes sense. And it's a very artistic way of painting Panzer Grey. And I suppose it's like the guys who do the olive drab, because if you're just doing A1, because this is going to be exactly because it's one colour. So this is going to be very contrasty. Extremely. It's going to be dulled down with weathering and stuff, but again, it's not going to be 4BO green at the end of the day. It's going to be nothing like 4BO green. But it's going to be interesting to look at, which is, you know, what I like. I like high contrast and...
To be honest, like I've said before, I stand by it. I don't think for a minute it's realistic whatsoever, because I've never seen a tank that's ever looked like one of them in the history of any book or anything I've ever seen. But I love it. I think it looks really, really good. You know, the bit where you get like an olive drab tank, and it technically should be dark olive drab, and it's almost yellow. It's been bleached out so much, you know, and all the rest of it. It looks absolutely beautiful. It looks fantastic, and I think it's a really nice, and for my personal taste, and to be honest, what we're talking about here, I think it's one of those things that I really like about it. And like we were saying, if I was to be looking at a giant table full of them all, that one that's been really done, you know, good contrast all the way through, really lightened and all the rest of it, that's the one I'll be drawn to, because I like that style of it, even though I know it's not accurate at all, you know. So, but again, it's one of those things, it's personal choice. That's what I like.
I would imagine with judging though, surely it's more about the quality of the paint finish, not necessarily how accurate the colour is.
So the question then, so saying you're building your model, and your model is absolutely seamless, perfect paint finish, it's totally in alignment and beats every other one in there, but you've painted it pink, does it win?
Well, speaking of experience, because Soren's made a good point in chat, because says Andy's most qualified after all, he's the only award-winning member of the team.
Hold on, I still want best in show at Telford for a Harrier. For a close second.
Neither was entered them.
No, neither was entered, but we did win it. Yeah.
But like you said, it's up to the individual modeler, isn't it, at the end of the day? And I think that's one of the reasons why we don't enter competitions, because we do it for our own, sounds wrong to say it, but our own self-gratification.
Yes.
Rather than sort of like, you know, what other people want to think.
Mm-hmm. Right, hold on. Mm-hmm. Right, I have a book here. All right, I'll show you the front cover. All right. Another AK book, obviously. But can we see the tank at the bottom?
Screen, if I can find you. Hold on, there you are. Yeah. Yeah.
So can you see that at the bottom?
Looks brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That obviously that colour there is nothing like that original tank would have been painted in, because it's probably some sort of olive drabby colour.
Yeah, it would normally be dark.
Because they've gone for the high contrast.
Yes.
Look.
Yeah.
But again, it runs through the old diorama.
Yes.
You know,
the bridge,
the stones is
the
high
lot.
contrast.
Yeah.
The bridge, the figures probably. It's just stands out. It's just got that.
Yeah.
You look at it, don't you?
Yes.
So again, it's all down to style as well, isn't it?
Absolutely, and everyone has their own style.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the whole point to it. And again, that's that thing again. You're into this. I think it's probably somewhat the problem with the hobby, because there's so many experts out there. But at the end of the day is that everybody has their opinion, you know, and everybody has their likes and their dislikes and so forth and so on. And I think that's what sort of, divides, instead of unifies the hobby, it sort of divides the hobby as well, is because everybody's an individual and everybody has their personal preference of what they want to see. So especially if you build something that they quite like. So, you know, say you're taking the Vulcan, you know, obviously it's a bit of a fan favourite, everybody likes it, everybody knows, you know, obviously the Doncaster light Vulcan now, because most people have seen it. But not a lot of modelers have probably seen the original ones in anti-flash white and all the rest of it. And the only photos that are around of them are, you know, there's a few colour ones, but they're dodgy colour ones as well. But most of them are black and white, and it's black and white video, you know, on YouTube and all the rest of it. So how white is it? But people will have their expectations of what white should be and how it should be weathered without knowing.
I mean, you've been to like Valley and stuff, haven't you? So you've seen, and you know, these guys who we know are on the forum or members or whatever who actually work on said aircraft, yeah? And they could probably say, well, none of them are the same colour.
Yeah.
Or anybody who works with any machinery, to be honest with you, whatever machinery.
Someone's coming to chat used to fly in at Valley.
Yeah, but I'm not being funny. Jamie's probably one of the few modeler pilots who probably cares what colour the plane is he's sat in. Because I know loads of pilots, and I've got a good friend of mine who used to fly Hornets, and I've asked him questions like this before, and he's like, I wouldn't know. When I do a walk around, I'm not looking at what colour it is, I'm just making sure all the bits aren't hanging off it. You know? You know, so I used to say to him about, what colour's this? Have you got any photos? He's like, honestly, it's not what I'm looking at. I'm looking to make sure it's all properly there and together. I don't know what colour it is. I wouldn't know. That's not my job. You know? So...
I mean, I think what's interesting is when you see dioramas. I think dioramas that look really good have really high contrast but restricted palettes.
Yes.
So when they paint them, they're not looking to do an accurate color because they're pulling all the colors of the various elements towards each other. So they shift the color of the tank to match the background. And I think some aircraft look good like that when they manipulate the colors to bring them closer together. So I just think it's a circular conversation, colour accuracy.
It is. It's never ending, isn't it?
Because then you've got that thing, you know, and JB used to fly certain black jets, as in props, Tucanos, as well as Hawks and stuff. The black that you see on, obviously those, and on black jets, they are black. But from a modelling point of view, like I always say, I don't use black or white because they're just such strong colours, they overpower everything. So I like to use like off shots of black, so it have blue in it, or I have a little bit of green into it, and that's why I quite like Tamiya's, you know, and to be honest, Guns' tyre black, because it's got that sort of hue into it that looks like weathered black rather than being very nice and shiny black. You know, so again, it's one of those things where, you know, you could do a Hawk jet, and I've got one up there somewhere. Here it is. Look, he's over here, and that is just done in gloss black. But from a model point of view, it looks like a toy. You know, it looks like a kid's toy because, you know, it's more grey on that side through the dust, but that side's the unweathered side. But again, it's one of those, it probably looks more realistic on that side because it's got a bit of dust on it and all the rest of it, and it does there because black is just so, you know, strong and overpowering. And in some ways, it's a bit like when you do a Red Arrows Hawk, isn't it? You know, we've been up to them. The Red Arrows Hawk are no way red whatsoever. You can't get any further away from red in a lot of cases because it's almost like an orangey colour. But if you use Hataka's colour, which is probably correct, if you was to paint it on the real aircraft, they just look wrong because it looks like it's orange. And, it, you know, and the theory is when you see them go around the sky, they're the red arrows because they're red. Even though it's not, it's more of an orangey red, you know? So again, it's one of those strange colours that reality says it should be that colour, but from a modelling point of view, it doesn't work.
Don't you think though they're the hardest colours to pull off as a modeller?
Yeah.
Like you've just pulled that Hawk up, and obviously a Red Arrows Hawk, or some of the display ones where they're clean, they're looked after, the shiny.
Yeah.
How do you, like you've just said, make that look interesting as a modeller without making it look like a toy?
Yeah, no, it is.
Or really fake.
Yeah.
You know, the guys who can pull that off are on a different level to me, because I think that is a lot harder than whether in a camoed one or any of the other schemes, I reckon, because like you say, you've got, you know, you're doing a World War II, say, Spitfire, you've got contrasting colours. Same with probably the, you know, even after some of the jets, but when you get into like the display birds, shall we say, especially like, let's say, the Red Arrows or some of the trainers you pulled out and stuff, and they're one colour, one block colour, again, it's hard to pull that off.
I bet you'd be surprised if you got right up close to a Red Arrows Hawk. You'd be surprised probably how weathered it actually is.
I've got photos. It's got a panel line in the one I did, wasn't it, Andy? Because me and Andy were there looking at it, and it's got a panel line right in the nose, and like, you know, it's just like the kit. You wouldn't believe how like the kit it is. The paint physically is cracked going up the nose to the windscreen.
The black one that they were towing out that had just been serviced, hadn't it? It was absolutely pristine.
Yeah.
And we said, "Oh, that looks nice and shiny." He said, "Yeah, it won't be when that lot got their hands on it."
Yeah. Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah, so like, you know, within days they're that filthy again, aren't they? And look wrecked and."
Yeah. But the funny thing is that there was a load of Red Arrows Hawks in there having maintenance when we were in there, and we were lucky enough to get to crawl all over them. And they are, like we've often said, is that aircraft look like they're highly tuned, like Formula One cars, but they're not. Not when you get up to them. They've got chunks out of them everywhere. They've got patches on them. They've got bits of tape, you know, this, that, and the other, all over, bits of filler, you know. Like I said many years ago, that A10 that clipped the fuel bowser at Yeovilton. So, you know, again, it's literally, he was like, yeah, we've just used a bit of Bondo on it, and it looked like, when I used to do it on my car before I'd sanded it down. And he said, oh, it's good enough to get it home. It's going back, stateside, and it was got to go into maintenance anyway. And they'd literally just like bondoed over it all to make it roughly sort of the right shape, and that's the thing to them, isn't it? I think we put them on a pedestal as modelers, and in theory ours are probably smarter and neater than the real thing ever was, like armour at the end of the day,
It's the same with the guys that build airliner kits and that. They build these immaculate looking models, and don't get me wrong, they look brilliant, but if you're ever actually on an airliner and you look out, they're bloody dirty. They're not clean at all.
No.
Yeah.
You've got to think they've got to earn the money, haven't they? So they're in the air rather than just sat around doing nothing. They're it's a business like anything. So get it fueled up, get it turned around, get the passage on it, and get it where it needs to go.
It's not earning money sat on the ground. That's it.
They're just buses, aren't they?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They are. Yeah.
Anyway, it's 22. We've got any?
No, we moved them all. No, we have. Right, okay, so what it is, guys, because some of you were putting up some very interesting statements and stuff like that, and we knew this show was going to be a big one. What we've done is we've moved them over to the video bit of it, so it's actually in there now. So obviously you can continue the conversation on with it, and it's all in one place, because I know you guys were continuing the conversation on the last ones, but you start a new thread for it, and it just goes all over the forum then. So we're just trying to keep them all in one place, so when people are answering, it's all in one thread, if that makes sense. So they are over there on today's vlog page for the 16th. They're down in there. Anyway, Stuart says on there, be interesting in the team's thoughts that he mainly does World War II German armour, and the reference books always all I read always mention about the troops having to make do with what they had, and for adding and the various things like that. So absolutely. I'll just paraphrase a little bit here. So it would be reasonable to say that the true colour and accuracy is based on the factory specifications. That's what we were saying as well. It goes, also interested to know how the team feel of colour accuracy is easier to achieve with military aircraft and armour after a certain point in time. For example, the last 30 years. So he's basically saying, do we think it's easier to do colour matching and to get a better colour on modern stuff than it is, say, World War II?
I would say, from armour point of view, I don't know about aircraft, so you can talk this, but I would probably say like the 3 NATO colours, I bet a lot of the manufacturers are in the same ballpark. NATO green, NATO black and NATO brown. I would probably say the sand colours are as well. So yeah, I would probably say there's probably more reference and obviously more to go on with the newer colours than obviously back 70 years ago. So yeah, I'd probably say if you get a line of said manufacturers, I bet they're all in the same ballpark.
Yes.
I don't think they'd be like John's sort of colour swatches where there's a lot of difference. There will be different shades, and different hues, but you'll know what they are, if that makes sense.
I think nowadays though we do get good quality colour photos of things, don't they? So it's easier to match colours. Whereas, like I say, going back to World War II, most of the stuff was in black and white. So
black and white photos.
And also, I think records, aren't they? So obviously today, if you go down to your local car dealer, like we were saying, you've got a paint code. That code is for that paint. You go on, and obviously in World War II, and especially, different factories were producing different paints. So that was always your problem, isn't it?
That was the idea of the RLM standard. They wanted it so that they could get the same colour accuracy. But obviously, as the war went on, especially after sort of like 43, 44, when they invaded Russia, or we sort of started to go through Europe, they didn't have time to mess around with the colours. But the first couple of years during the Second World War, when the German troops were sort of like basically just in the home, they were just like billeted in places. They could spend time on accuracy and colours, but later on it just like slap on and mess around with it, wasn't it?
I would probably think though, like obviously a Sherman tank, and obviously we had the BS colours, did we, British Standard colours, and obviously the US Federal colours. So they had a guide, shall we say. But you can't tell me that a GM Sherman was going to come out the same shade of olive drab as one coming out of a Ford factory or whichever, a Chrysler factory or whichever factory was coming out.
But that's because they were being built quickly in a time of proper war, wasn't it? Whereas the Germans, at the beginning of the war, once they conquered the Europe, they were basically in stalemate, weren't they? No one was really attacking them, so there was no problems. They were churning tanks out left, right, and centre, but we're having the problems of worrying about quality. Yeah, well, they could spend the time on quality because they weren't being attacked. Whereas, like, when the Americans then started doing the Lend-Lease stuff, it was like churning it out because they could, couldn't they? So it was just like banging it out, which is where you get the colour problems. Once we then invaded Europe and Russia, Germany gone into Russia, the supply chains and problems started building up. So then they needed to churn them out quicker. So then the colour accuracy goes, doesn't it?
So what we're saying is then, obviously, wartime is going to be a different process to peacetime.
Yes.
Because of the strains of being in a war.
It is the strains of, obviously, logistics. Yeah.
And obviously,
It's getting after the Second World War when we started painting our tanks and things. What was it, bronze green?
Yeah.
Bronze green's bronze green. There's no sort of real variation of it, is there? It's just a shiny, horrible
dark green.
Yeah. See what I mean?
Yeah.
Again, because they didn't need to. They could spend the time dealing with it, and so it was just produced, mass produced.
Yeah.
There was no constraints on what they were doing.
Yeah.
It was like, bang it all out and do it. Horrible colour as well.
Definitely. Russell's saying about will Piet be stocking AZ kits? Because obviously we were talking about it on yesterday's show, and they do some nice stuff.
We do stock them.
We do stock it. Not a great range, I'll be honest. Not massive,
but we have got them.
But yeah, because they do. Because Nathan's built an AZ kit, and you got one. You're 109.
I've built an AZ 109.
Good, aren't they?
They're all right, yeah.
Good. There you go. So yeah.
If there is anything that floats your boat and we don't stock it, just if you just message me, I can give you a price and see what we can do for you.
And he's also saying thank you very much for the advice we gave about the compressor yesterday about going for Sparmax. So he's going to probably do that.
Good call.
Good stuff. Adam's obviously, he was talking about camouflage and the various things down in there, but he says, question, loosely based on colour, actually, do you choose a colour scheme for the model before you build it or once you have actually finished the construction?
That's the first thing I look at is what I'm going to paint, what colours I'm going to do it in.
Pretty much, yeah. I might change it if I suddenly something comes along or decals or something, the markings may differ. And I might suddenly change my mind at the last minute, but normally, as you say, it's what colour has drawn me to building it. I know it's a bit different for modern stuff, but World War II especially, I might, it's what markings it's in and the colour scheme, that's what I'm going for.
And sometimes, it's say like an EDAR kit where you might get 10 different schemes in it. Those schemes might be slightly different in the build. So you have to decide which one you're going to build, which scheme you're going to do as you start building it, because there might be slight variations on the. Yeah.
He's saying also, do we know the current name for Pledge Future? What is it called this week?
No idea.
Because have they changed it to a brown bottle now? Is it still floor care finish, or have they changed it and they've called it something else? That's what it was, but I know it's now in a browner bottle, isn't it? I think they call it a brown one, but I think it's called floor care finish. Don't know if somebody in live chat knows what they're calling it this week. They tend to change it every week.
Yeah, the one I've got is from America, so I don't know what.
Yeah, that's the American one as well. I got in when they first did it, but
I've still got the old smelly lemon one. Was it?
Oh God, what in the white bottle?
The white bottle.
The when they added the scent so to stop people drinking it.
Makes your room smell nice.
Right, Tim says it's called Revive It. Yeah, that's the horrible milky one. That is. I've still got 4 bottles of the original. If anybody wants them, and they're still clear. They haven't gone yellow yet.
Nathan uses it. He loves the stuff, don't you, Nathan?
Nathan, if you need some, I have got some here. Look.
One of mine's like treacle.
Ooh, look how crusty that's gone. Look. Yeah. Crusty. And it's like this bottle.
Back to the 90s.
God, yeah. Can you remember when that was fetching like 40 quid a bottle?
It was like 40 quid a bottle, wasn't it? Yeah.
Nathan's just come over all peculiar.
There you go. But these used to be. I'll tell you what's funny, it's starting to pucker in a little bit. It's actually this. Oh, this one's doing it as well. They're actually denting in at the back where they've been sealed that long because these are from the 90s. But keep them in a dark room like mushrooms, they'll be fine. There you go, Nath. If you need some, we'll talk about cash. I'll be like his dealer, sending him 50ml bottles.
Clandestine floor polish deals.
That's it.
Yeah.
But there we go. It was called, what's it called now? Somebody just said, I think it was called Revive It.
Revive.
Revive.
Revive it. Ooh.
Oh, there we go. So it's called Revive. And Michael says, a colour-related question. He goes, he's just bought his first AK real colours, Sky REF Cockpit Green, Slate Grey and Extra Dark Sea Grey for his 48 scale FX Sea Hurricane and Seafire. My question is, using Mr. Colour thinners, can I spray straight onto the plastic or is a primer a must? I'm currently interested in the cockpits, so I'd like to jump in with one of the kits and get started without having the hassle of having to wait for primer to dry on interior parts, since we won't be handling it and masking over it. I must admit, I don't prime interiors. Does anyone prime interiors?
No, not really.
Matt does, because he's
I prime
perfect.
everything.
He primes his hands, his legs.
See, the primer's there for a reason, though, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, but normally.
But you're going to see it in the cockpit?
It's not the point, is it? It's the paint adhesion.
Okay. So if you're good, and a good painter, as Matt is, because he's been schooled over the years, it's been schooled in it. You can't change it if you wanted to. You should prime absolutely everything, but I'll be honest with you, I don't think I've ever primed an interior in my life. Prime the outside all the time.
Prime everything.
You prime everything, don't you, John?
Prime everything, yeah.
I'm probably 60-40. 60 I don't, 40 I do.
Yeah.
I would say for
I'd always
me
do the outside.
is to prime it because it will get you in good habits of priming stuff.
I'm very good. I prime absolutely everything on the outside these days.
Yeah.
But just don't prime interiors. I don't know. I just, yeah. Nate, do you prime your interiors?
I don't really prime anything properly. I just use Tamiya paint. I just spray the interior in the colour that the main colour and off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I've ever primed a cockpit. I might have black based it to do like shadow.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I don't prime.
Don't that count as priming then?
Mm.
I would say that's a form
I'm
of
one of
primer.
these people that I don't have any of these primers. I just use Tamiya paint with rapid thinners. Real colour needs a primer though. I think it lifts.
So we just find out how we build so many kits so quick.
Yeah. It's all these shortcuts he does.
Exactly.
But yeah, so I think what we're saying is that yes, you should. But as I say, I think it's one area where you could probably get away with not, if you're not going to be touching it at all. If it's just a one and done type coat, then I think you'd be fine with it. But if you're planning on perhaps masking it, if it's a modern jet, for instance, for doing the black panels and stuff, the last thing you want to do is take the tape off and end up with paint behind you. Yeah, plastic, straight down to the plastic. So you probably would want to prime it. But as you say, really, the whole point of primer is for paint adhesion. For better adhesion. Andrew says, hi all, I'm working through a few 72nd scale aircraft and was wondering how much weathering do I do in a cockpit. I usually pre-shade and after painting a gloss coat and weather with a wash and dry brush, then gloss again to seal it in and then weather and then a matte coat. Crikey, that's going the other extreme. 100 things in there. Is that too much? Any help appreciated?
But that's personal taste. If you're happy doing that, then who are we to tell you any different? We're not. Well,
I can't see the point in the gloss coat to seal the weathering in and then put the matte coat on, because the matte coat would seal the weathering anyway. So
yeah,
that last gloss coat.
I mean, Bill, do you know what? I'm looking at my yak and I'm struggling to see the seat belts in there. Never mind the weathering I did.
Get him in a minute. There he is.
Biggest cockpit in the world.
I mean, if you can have your canopy shot on a 72 scale aircraft that's this big,
Yeah.
I'm literally holding it right under the light, and I'm doing well to see the seat belts. Mine, I did weather the cockpit floor. I put a bit of mud and chip in on the seat, and you can't see any of it. So if the canopy's open, yeah, spend a bit of time on it. But otherwise, just in 72 scale with a closed canopy, I can't see any of the stuff.
But the one thing I missed with not doing aircraft is actually doing the cockpit, because that was quite interesting bit of it for me.
Yeah.
The weathering and the going through the process of doing the cockpit. So again, it's personal choice, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it
But
is.
if you enjoy doing it, then don't stop yourself doing it.
Mark says on there about he also uses acrylics every time, but someone told him that he doesn't have to if he's using lacquers. Is this true? You still need to prime with lacquers. It's just better adhesion, and obviously it's got that thing about you can check everything. So technically, if it's all looking perfect in primer, you could just go ahead. But if you've got some problems with it, like as you say, if your photo etch is lifted, classic example. I was talking to somebody the other day about it, and I was saying primer coats. If you've got surface photo etch, you can see if you've got any gaps. Yet it's very difficult to see it if you haven't. But many times I've sprayed on some primer and then the photo etch has got a lift on it, and you can spot it straight away. So you can just get a little bit of glue in there, push it down, wipe it all off. It's in primer, so it's absolutely fine. Give it another coat of primer and you're good to go. You wouldn't spot that, I don't think, until you got it into paint. And by that time, you can't have the luxury of just putting a daub of glue under it and pushing it down and all the rest of it. So in some ways, it will save you, hopefully, in the long run. So spending a little bit more time putting a primer coat down, and then having a good look around your model, making sure it's all happy to move on to the next stage, I think it can save you falling over a little bit further down the line.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's not just about paint adhesion. It's just, it shows any blemishes up. If you've gone a bit crooked with some scribing, anything like that, it just stands out like a sore thumb once you've got some paint on it. And it's better to do it with just a base primer coat than, your final colour coat.
Absolutely.
Definitely. David says, would the team agree that there's a balance of contrast between the colours in the camo scheme probably matters more than the individual colour being completely 100% accurate? Every colour looks different in different lighting conditions, so almost impossible to see the true colour in day-to-day conditions. Which is probably true, and that goes on to be saying about, obviously, when you put the contrast in, it can change the original colour. So if you've got something along, so if you're using camos and things, thinking about it, to be honest, when I did Splinter on Ambush, which is the F-18 I did, I think when I put the white down originally, I wasn't happy with the white, but then when we got the grey in, I was thinking, I'm still not happy, but the black made it all work. And it came together. So that may be that thing about the balancing of the colours, even though they're not 100%, but it makes it feel right right the way through. And again, Ambush is a really difficult one because I didn't have the correct colours, so I sort of fudged it a bit on that one. But again, I was happy of how it came out.
You did read that. Krista's given a shout out to me.
Yes, I did.
Did you?
No, I didn't read it. I didn't want to blow sunshine up your ass, but I will do. First, a shout out to Andy for keeping it up. You are a fighter. So I just make sure I read that correctly. Hope you feel better.
Really, man? I'd like to tell everybody what's wrong with me,
but we got
another
time.
show for that.
But nobody, but nobody knows. So.
Never mind. And he did have another fall this week, though. But we're okay. We're going to buy him some bags and can get him up again.
I'm going to buy him an Iron Man suit. That's what we're going to get him.
That's it. That's what we need, actually. That's it. We'll have a fundraiser at Christmas. We
All
like
I can say is
RoboCop.
He needs one of those Zorb balls, doesn't he? That we can put him in.
Yeah.
Just rolling round everywhere.
That's it.
Yeah, that won't make me sick. All I can say is that I've got issues. I will. But then I'm having tests. But then when I've had the tests, they found more issues, which I never even knew I had. So then I've had more tests, some very uncomfortable tests.
It's not 9 o'clock yet, mate. You can't talk about this. It's not past the watershed.
But yeah, they'll find out. I'll either, be all right, or I won't. It's what. All right, keep going. Next one.
Are we all right? Right, okay. So Simon says, hi guys, probably gone past Matt's bedtime. No, you're not. You've got another minute. I believe the colour actually is a personal preference. He was saying here, some modelers will paint their models any colour they want. My daughter is currently building her first tank and is in 2 shades of pink camo. The majority of modelers will be happy to choose a colour within the same ballpark, knowing it will change during the weathering process, whereas others would wish to match the paint as closely as possible to the reference photos of the scheme. The reason I read that one out is purely because I think that's the great thing about it, because kids don't care. And that's the whole point. Really, we should all be like Simon's daughter, and you build it. She wants to do it in 2 shades of pink camo, then fair play. I remember my eldest, when she did her first plane, she did it in red and pink on the F-15, and my youngest was complaining because it wasn't grey. Saying, no, it's not right, it should be grey. And it's like, but she wants to do it that colour, fair play to her, you know, and all the rest of it. And then she stenciled it and all the rest of it with unicorns, and it looked great.
Nathan's niece did was it a Spiff or a Messerschmitt in
Still got
red?
I've got it.
But yeah, and if they enjoy doing it, then why not?
Absolutely. You know, but that's the thing, isn't it? I think the great thing with kids is that they just act perfect. There you go.
Mustang.
Like, literally, whatever the hell she wanted, she did it.
Absolutely. But that's the great thing about it. And the thing is that they got brilliant enjoyment out of doing it. And that's what this hobby is all about. You should be enjoying it. You build it exactly how you want. Who cares if it's not quite the right colour? You know, at the end of the day, if you're happy with it, like we've often said 100 times before, or I've said it, I'm stuck record definitely. But like I've always said, if you are, you know, proud enough of your model to post up a photo on the forum, or take it to a model show, or take it to your local club, or even show it to your family, you know, then you're happy with your work and all the rest of it. So nobody can tell you it's wrong in any shape or form, because you've done it for the enjoyment of what you do. You know, and that's the whole point of doing this hobby. At the end of the day, you do it for the pure love of it, the escapism of it. You know, everybody's got their own reasons why we do this hobby, but at the end of the day, hopefully we all enjoy it, you know, and that's why you should be doing it.
Is Jamie still on chat? Because he's building a Buccaneer and he's done it in US markings, and that must be making people absolutely turn at the minute. He's done a great job of it, but you know, he's done a whiffy, hasn't he? And it's just like, I can imagine the feedback from that is from the purists of a Buccaneer in US markings must be, oh God, yeah.
And that's the thing, isn't it? At the end of the day, you're doing something different because you want to do it different. So
yeah,
that's the whole point. But yeah, I imagine there's lots of people spinning. Definitely.
Cool.
Yes. So cool. Anyway, that's it. That's it for questions. Sorted.
That's it. Not bad.
We're all done. Look at that. On the time as well. We're on the nail. Very, very
One
good.
thing from chat that we should read out about bronze green. It's Stephen that's nobody posted anything in chat for 20 seconds. Stephen said that he worked in the British Army in the 70s, and every year they sent the tanks to Norway and painted them white over bronze green, and when they came back to the UK they painted bronze green over the white. Paint was thinned with petrol and it had red in it as well, so there's no way the tanks with the regiment were the right colour of green.
No.
So if the real tanks weren't the right colour, why the hell are we worried about the little ones on our desk?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyway, quick shout out for everyone who hasn't seen it. Obviously, the new tutorial area is up on the forum, and it will be live tomorrow on the actual main site as well. Look at me, that's my idea of an exploded diagram of an airbrush. But anyway, obviously all the ones we've been doing this week, all the videos and some of the older ones which talk about the questions we get asked a lot on this show as well are in this one. So this one's obviously talking about the bench vent and things like that. That's talking about compressors. This one is about making your own spray booth filters and obviously masks and stuff, because we get lots of questions about those. I've put all of those in ones, and then obviously we've got the new videos here. This one just talks about air. and how obviously that works with your ones. And also it's got troubleshooting, like when you get no air and various things like that. So that's down in there. And again, there's photos. But if you want to get these photos giant size, they'll be on the main site. If you click on them, they'll go full screen, so you get huge ones. Obviously paint mixing, what you're trying to find with your paints. And again, it does go for all paints. I know we only briefly touch on acrylics and that with these videos because we're sort of going through them quite quickly, but I stand by what these say for any paint, so it doesn't matter. And then obviously we got one down in here which was about your paint mix versus, you know, equals air equals distance and how it affects. So I show down in there is that, you know, you go in so that way you can feel, you know, hopefully get the sweet spot. Again, there's a troubleshooting guide at the end of that one as well. And then the one that we had the other day is the textures video of really how you get the textures, why you get the textures, and how to deal with textures and rough finishes and stuff like that. So that's what that video talks about, that one as well. And then next week I'm going to be going through a load of other stuff about airbrushing, a little bit more advanced stuff, like, you know, obviously painting down finishes, gloss finishes, white glosses. We'll be talking about day glows, we'll talk about metal finishes, camo work and all things like that during next week's ones. And then I'm going to be rattling off a couple of kits in quick succession to talk about constructions and how they go, glues and fillers and tools and all bits and pieces along those ones as well next week. But again, you have got the Vulcan will be up with you on Friday, and it will be up with you on Monday, because there's another like 5 parts probably on that one before we finish that. So hopefully by then my mystery box might be coming down here next week, which will have my next build in it. So I'll be running along with that one. Hey?
Can I just say as well, the next part of my long-awaited second part of the figure should be up next week. Andy's done a ton of editing, but he needs another bit I've got on my on the PC here, or the laptop.
Yes.
And then we should be back on with that series. So yeah, I'm back on it as well.
Cool. Very, very good. Also, the review of this one up today as well for the Bristol View photo, though apparently we're out of stock.
Gone.
They've all gone. So
Yeah,
anyway, it's a great kit. If you can get hold of it, you'll love it.
I didn't mind that we had loads of them. I was going to put them on specials today, but
We ain't sold out.
They've all gone, funnily enough. Anyway, it is a lovely kit though, fantastic. I like Rebel stuff like that. It's that thing where it's got a fantastic jump point. It's quite basic as it sits. It's just a fantastic kit. Looks pretty much all there, but you could really add to it and make it into something very, very special. Very nice.
So is it the right colour of extra dark sea grey?
I was going to say it looks a bit bluey to me, but could be the box art, or is it my monitor, or is it my eyes?
Or is it the lighting?
Is it the lighting, or do I care? No.
why is the box 3 times the size of the Tammy one when it's the same size aircraft?
This is true, but actually, it's the way they package it.
It's the instructions.
The instruction sheet, yeah, it's about that big. That's the trouble. So that's why they have to do it that size. Anyway, hopefully we've put this little argument to bed. At the end of the day, summary: no one cares. As long as you're happy with it, that's it. That's, you know, we could have started with this and just gone and thanks and good night and gone 2 hours ago. But honestly,
we've done over an hour and a half for that. We could have just said at the beginning.
Yeah, but that's literally it. At the end of the day, just don't worry about it. Enjoy it. Enjoy the hobby. Enjoy what you do, and just don't care what anybody says, because at the end of the day, you are correct. Believe in yourself, and you'll be absolutely fine. Right, that is it from us. Thank you very much, gentlemen. If we're all done, we can get out of here. We all good? Right, I'd like to thank you all this evening for joining us. Absolute pleasure as always. As I say, I'll be with you tomorrow for the roundup show. A few other bits and pieces. Next part of the Vulcan will be up, so forth and so on. If not, we'll catch you all next week then, won't we, guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Good night. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.